Welcome to the Mesa Chamber of Commerce Inside Business Podcast. My name is Sally Harrison, and I'm the CEO of the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. Today, we're in the University of Phoenix podcast studio, and joining me as today's guest is Larry Young. Welcome back, Larry.
Thank you, Sally.
Well, we appreciate you being here and bringing in all the tips that you do, and obviously, we want to talk about your book, Walk the Sales Plank, which if people haven't got it, they should go on Amazon. It's easy to order. We appreciate you coming back because you do have a lot of information to share. Last time you were here, we spoke about how you coach leaders to success. But let's talk a bit about some of your experience in leading teams.
Perfect. Sounds good.
We got a lot to cover today.
Okay.
You rose to a market president at a very young age and continue to have success. You talked last time about growing people to grow market share, but what are a few things you did well that gave you success?
Yeah, I think there's a number. I mean, I always give credit to the team first, because they're the ones that made me look better than I deserve.
If you don't have a team, you're alone.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
can't
absolutely.
do as much.
Absolutely. One of the things that when I look back that I think made a big difference when we were growing markets and applicable for anybody in business or leading is that I really had created a uniform message through and throughout the organization. So I was doing I'll give you an example. I was doing some coaching for some nonprofits not that long ago. And one of the things I asked a nonprofit executive is I said, what would happen if I wrote you a check for $50,000 today? What would you do with it? And of course, when she picked herself up out of her check, the question I was asking her was, what exactly would you do? What check would you write? And what impact would that be? I mean, what would that money really do? And so, of course, she had an answer for it once she picked herself up, jokingly. But then I asked her a question that really challenged her, and it was this. I said, if I pulled each one of your board members into a room alone and asked them the same question, would they give the same answer? To which she knew they would not. So how do you really create an organization that's going in the same direction when not everybody's singing from the same hymnal, if you will? So one of the things I did right away is I had that real difference. So it's defining who we are, what we stand for, and what our organization was different at. And so I jokingly, I was golfing. We had a men's night back in one of the markets I was used to manage, and we were sitting there golfing. When somebody asked me, they said, "Larry, what is it so different with your organization versus the other 7 in town that do the same thing?" And so I rattled off my answer, and he looked at me. He says, "I just golfed with one of your bankers 3 weeks ago, and they said the same exact thing." And that's when you know that you have that power in the entire organization working towards betterment of customers.
That's really good news because not everybody would do that. If you ask, your board members,
That's right.
Not everybody's going to have the same answers.
Well, and it's a great exercise to do with your team in the next team meeting is to sit down and define what is it that we really stand for and what does that look like and get everybody saying the same thing.
I like it. What is one of the best leadership tips that you've received over the years? I'm sure there's been a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'll actually give you 2. One quick one is I always like the idea of inspect what you expect. Being able to go in and analyze if you asked somebody to do something or you're holding them accountable or something, to always inspect that. It's the idea of the fortunes and the follow-up. I've always loved that one. But the one that actually changed, the tip that I got, it was more of a question that changed my leadership forever, and it'll change your listeners. I was at a time when things weren't going well. I was,
Everybody has a time like that, right?
It's a tough year and that type of thing, and I'm working harder. You know how we as leaders, instead of working smarter, we just work harder, So our thought is that we'll just continue to do the things we've always done. Well, one of the biggest killers of success in leadership is success itself. We become complacent. So I go to this mentor friend of mine. He was actually a coach for me for a little bit, and he asked me a question, and the question was this. He said, when is the last time you did something for the first time?
Ooh. Yeah, that gives you pause, right?
It does take pause because, like I said, what I realized is that I had gotten complacent in success. And when you're doing that, again, back to the parable of the boiling frog that I always, that was my company's namesake, that we all of a sudden just fall in love with the comfort of doing what we're doing and we're not reinventing ourselves. And so ask yourself at the end of the week, did I do anything for the first time that was meaningful? And it challenges you.
I think I'm going to have to put that on the staff agenda. That's really, that's a good thing to ask yourself, though, because you do get complacent. I know, you just go through the process every day of doing the things you have to do. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's like, I didn't get everything done. Did I really stretch myself?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is when times are tough, and even when times are good, we as leaders like to bury ourselves in our work. We're happy doing what we're doing and making sure things are. But we have to pull ourselves out of that muck sometimes and ask ourselves, are we reinventing ourselves as leaders?
Right.
Yeah.
Good tip. How do great leaders avoid getting stuck in a rut, and how do they stay fresh?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've always said, and my boys, if they listen to this, they can finish this sentence. But I always say readers are leaders, and I have seen more careers go from ashes to rock star status, if you will, by people that decided to pick up a book and learn something around leadership or something around sales, something around negotiation or having difficult conversations, and they acquire knowledge that is going to help make their people better or their organization better.
Yep.
But what it does is it gives them a broader perspective and allows them, reading what it allows them to do is help them to see around corners or see patterns that other leaders don't. So I've always said that the worst time to find out your best employee is unhappy is the day they resign.
Right.
It's too late, isn't it? And even if they stay, they're usually never the same.
Sure.
And so by having a reading plan where you're acquiring information gives you a broad perspective and allows you to start to say, hey, something's wrong, something's different in the culture, or you're gaining different perspectives. So I always tell audiences when I speak at keynotes, I say you'll never stay stuck in your comfort zone if your mind is moving forward.
Okay, so other than Walk the Sales Plank, a really good book everybody should read, give me 2 other books that people should have their teams read.
Well, it's interesting that you ask because I get asked that a lot in terms of leadership, and there's a little bit of a difference between leadership and management. I can explain that here in a little bit. But there's a couple of them that I really like if you're talking about leadership as a whole. I like Willpower Doesn't Work. It's one that's really designed to build a culture around you that's very intentional and very deliberate. I think some of the best reading out there is some of the old management books. And you can even go back, and people will yawn when I say this, but even go back to like the Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yep.
You can find some about dealing with difficult conversations. There's a good book out there, Culture Code by Dan Coyne. It's a little bit of a drier read, but got some really great information. Cool. So I'm really big into culture from that standpoint and developing that. Yeah.
Super. Is there a difference between leadership and management?
Yeah, in fact, kind of tying on what you had just asked me, here's why I struggle a lot of times with leadership books is leadership books are really kind of the painted beauty of management. So what I always tell people when I'm doing speaking and keynotes is that if you want to be a great leader, be a great manager first.
Okay.
But it's not as flashy, is it, right? It's kind of cool to say, hey, I'm a leadership coach, but if I said I was a management consultant, it would be like a yawn, right? Or that's so 80s, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, all great leadership follows great management. So when you're reading, as I mentioned in the last question you asked me, and you're learning management skills, it actually makes you a better leader. So when I'm acquiring skills that help me to give a difficult conversation to somebody or to be able to identify that something's wrong in somebody's life, a team member, and I'm doing something to make a difference, or be able to lead organizational change and create buy-in, and I'm acquiring those management type skills, I'm leading.
I like it.
And the leading always follows, but we fall in love with leadership books. But when's the last time someone said, I'm going to go get a management book, right? But the reality is the fundamental basics of leadership are built in that, and then you can soar to the highest levels.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
How do great leaders continue to push themselves so that they don't become complacent?
Yeah, there's lots of ways, because we talked about being lonely at top. The one that I share to groups when I'm speaking to is what you really need to have as a personal board of advisors around you, people that are designed in your life to push you either to acquire a better skill or just to push you to performance. So if you think about it, Sal, you think about runners, and there's some people will get this, and if you're not a runner, you know that when people run like mid-level race or mid-distance races, they'll have things like people in there called pacers.
Yep.
And the pacers are designed really to obviously set the pace.
I know about this because I've seen it on TV.
Have you? Okay. Yeah,
not in real life, obviously.
So you're saying you don't have racing? Okay. But it's a fantastic picture because what they're designed to do is to keep that pace, and your job is just to follow along so that you can achieve the goal. And so the question I'll ask audiences a lot of times is, who are the pacers in your life?
That makes sense.
And to sit down, Sally, like I said, I always say at the end of the work week, and to sit down and go, who are the people in my life that are really designed to push me either to a specific skill
Right.
or to push me to higher performance? Because we know that leadership, when you get a new leadership position, your learning curve is a steep upward angle.
Right.
But then over time, complacency or whatever starts to shallow that out. A personal board of advisors is designed to keep that incline at a high level. So
That's great information. I think everybody needs some pacers in their life. How do leaders make great decisions for themselves, for their organizations, and their people, their team?
It's a challenge, but it ties back to one of the first questions you asked me about courage, and being able to make a decision that you're not afraid of that the mistakes, and that's what opens.
Did
up
it
your
yesterday?
Yeah, open your creativity. I just read Harvard Business Review just had a study not too long ago. We make 32,000 decisions a day. And of course, some of that could be what cereal
Brushing
I
your
eat
teeth
and
or
brush-
not.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Are you saying something? No. But there's power in understanding that the quality of the decisions you make, if you try to improve those, make a huge difference. And there's been some studies out there. It's kind of around the idea of choice blindness. And what the idea is, Sally, is that we actually, in most cases, make up our mind, and then we can cite anything out there, an article, a newspaper, or something that we've read to justify why our decision is right. I mean, you've sat with people, haven't you? And you get that person that you've talked about politics or maybe religion, and they've got their mind just made up, right?
Oh, like all the people on Facebook that think that they can post and
That's
change
right.
your mind,
yeah,
right?
change your mind. But they can cite
Yep.
any article or
Yep.
anything possible
Right.
to justify why their decision. What I always tell leaders in coaching is that is a poor way to make a decision.
Sure.
And what you'll find is that the more educated you are on a particular topic, the more apt you are to see incongruencies. And you'll be able to see through all the noise and be able to make better decisions.
That makes sense.
So it kind of ties back to
Yeah.
the reading and learning, always acquiring knowledge that'll
Yep.
make better decisions. Powerful leadership.
Very smart.
Yeah.
So, as a leader, I mean, you've done lots of things. What are some of your proudest moments as a leader?
Well, I think it's easy to look at accomplishment. I don't really look at awards, but I think any award that I ever got or recognition I got that was given by my team was probably the one that either would bring tears to my eyes or
Sure.
meant the most, and I still have them, on my mantle, if you will. The thing that I'm really the most proud of in all the years that I led organizations wasn't the success of the organization, it was the success of the people. And I think it was over a 5 or 6 year period, I had 65 position promotions underneath me, people
Wow.
that were moving into different roles.
That says a lot.
It does, and in fact, it's hard to say I'm proud of this, but in a period of time, I had 4 bankers become either vice presidents or bank presidents at another bank. So I
Wow.
was able to promote them up. I was sad to see them leave, but I was proud of what they accomplished. And I think those are the things that I'll always look back on, and I'll be the most proudest of.
It's probably a really good way to end our segment here because, I mean, what can you do to top that?
Yeah.
When you're taking care of your team.
So as people.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry, for coming in today and joining us on the Inside Business Podcast. You can find all of our episodes on the Inside Business Podcast at iTunes, Google Play, or your own favorite podcast website. You can also find them online at mesachamber.org.